Okay, welcome to School of Fish, our favorite 2022 summer associate, Devlin Shea.
How's it
Welcome.
going? Good. I've watched a bunch of these. Good to finally be on.
You're as they say, you're in prime time and in the big time right now. So, um, we did a post, I believe, early in the summer, acknowledging to the world that not only did you have the best name of all time in Bizydev to work with us, but that we were excited to have you join the team. And so this is a bit of a introduction and a capturing of what the last 2.5 months have been like. So for everyone's benefit, maybe give a little bit of intro on your background, where you come from, your schooling, where you worked, and then we'll jump into a little bit about your experience this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you, from the very beginning is a small town guy. Grew up in Vermont, and being outdoors was always a big part of my life, which eventually led me to be a cross country ski racer. Started doing that competitively in middle school, and that was kind of my driving force for a number of years. I did it competitively through high school and college, and that's part of what brought me to decide to go to Harvard for my undergrad. So I'd been based in the Northeast. I graduated from Harvard in 2017, and took my first full-time job in management consulting at Bain Company. And after starting in their home office in Boston for a year, as part of the team that helped open up our new Seattle office in 2018, and have called Seattle home base since then. Past fall, September of 2021, came back east to start grad school at the Tuck Business School at Dartmouth, and really using this time back in school to explore my interest and long-term goals around entrepreneurship, and moving from what's been a great early career in management consulting to figuring out a way to take my career toward more early stage and fast growing business, which is something I have a lot of excitement for. So it's a little bit of my background, and probably tees up pretty well how I eventually got to meet you, John, and got introduced to Bizydev, and got connected, to do a summer internship, which has been amazing exposure to John and the team at Bizydev, as well as, all the really interesting clients that we're working with. It's been a great experience. And as you noted, this is kind of the end of the full-time internship. But part of what's been really great about being at a small dynamic firm is we have the flexibility to, keep the relationship going and find ways to work together going forward, which will be really great.
No, and that was a great overview. Your overview skills and intros have improved during the summer. I was actually looking back to when I believe we posted something on a few university websites that we were looking for a growth marketing summer associate. And smartly, Jordan, who works with me, spoke to this guy this morning. I was just reading back an email from April. Knew going into it that it wasn't a fit for the growth marketing role, given that he had no graphic design or branding experience, but seems like he really is interested in the general Bizydev opportunity and has a pretty impressive background. Could be worth having a follow-on conversation. I know we weren't actively looking for a generalist associate, and he completely understands if our current needs do not match what he's looking for, but he said he'd be interested in the future as well to keep the conversation going. So kind of like a full circle moment in that we didn't, for us to put a general hire, we felt may not lead us down the path that we want. So this summer we tried to be a little bit more specific, and funny enough, we landed and got introduced to you, and you were smart enough to submit an inquiry, speak to Jordan, impress him. I paid attention to that email, followed up, we hit it off, and in this world where you're interviewing, meeting people remotely, and it's hard that the job market is so strong. We were also felt lucky that we had identified you as a lead candidate, and you were interested and trusted us that we could deliver a good summer associate experience. So fast forward now, almost 4.5 months later from that initial email, I am happy to say that you exceeded expectations. Really, I think did a great job. If I recall, one of the things that I stressed was the importance of really executing and being resourceful. And when I wasn't going to be, side by side with you on a day-to-day basis, like we used to have pre-COVID, that it was going to be you were to have to take it upon yourself to really step up and kind of, as they say, I think it's punch above your weight. I have like cliche phobia sometimes, punch above your weight or play above your weight. And you've done a great job. So looking back at my career and having, associates and interns and all of those things, I would definitely say, Devlin, that you kind of were in the top tier of anyone that's ever worked with us on a short-term basis. And I kind of want to use today to let the world know how we feel about your performance, maybe in the future even defer to this interview as your reference letter of sorts or recommendation piece, and kind of change up how it's normally done. And I was thinking about this before the interview. Usually someone interviews, they get an offer, they work, they have a great experience. There's some, sending off moments. Maybe you stay in touch during the school year. And then come next season, when you're looking for your next role, maybe somewhere else, you will reach out to me or someone from our team and say, guys, I'm interviewing for this job. Would you be open to giving a recommendation? Or could I use you as a reference? So this is now the inverse. This is the new age way of giving references. Is let's do it while, our feelings and sentiment is strongest at the kind of second to last day of the position. And then hopefully next summer, I'm saying it publicly, anyone that is hopefully, if you don't work with us, because we'll leave that open as well, we support Devlin as a candidate entering the workforce post his MBA. So anyway, that's the full circle story.
Now I just have to continue to live up to it. But no, I appreciate it very much. And, this is also a good opportunity and platform for me to say thank you. And I was reflecting on the same kind of back and forth and where we started in the spring. And it was kind of nice to, like you said, have a full circle moment where now looking back on the summer, knowing you guys better, knowing how you do business and how you work, I think that's what worked for me, is that I think I approached you in the same way that you guys approach your business and approach business development, which is, I saw your business, was really interested in it, and what you guys were trying to accomplish, and was frankly somewhat unconcerned with exactly where I may or may not fit into that journey, but I just had to reach out. And I did so and was straightforward about sort of saying, hey, here's where my skill set is. Here are some ways I imagine it could be of value. And I recognize it doesn't necessarily line up with kind of the job posting that I saw at the moment. But I had to connect, and I know there's opportunity here. And at the very least, let's stay in touch. And so it's kind of nice to then get into the rhythm with you guys and see that, you approach things the same way, right? Identifying the opportunities, and then letting them grow over time. And so I'm glad it worked out, and very grateful.
No, it's all good stuff. And one thing I don't believe I've shared with you, definitely not with a larger audience, is that in the first part of my career, we had these great summer interns. I, formed a great personal relationship, a business relationship. And we would kind of at the end of the summer say, how do we really demonstrate to them how much they learned, or how they were entrenched in the business. And I created, I would say 10 or 15 years ago, an intern test, which was really for that candidate to see, and maybe we'd have them complete at the beginning of the summer and then at the end of the summer to show how much they learned. And in the work we do, it is hard to pinpoint exactly what you learn. So I'm going to turn it over to you and kind of give you a chance. Two things. One is to really explain your perspective on what business development is and kind of generally the work we're doing at Bizydev from your vantage point. And then two, kind of just some takeaways on skill sets that you developed or feel like you improved on this summer being part of the team and the business.
Great. Yeah. Well, let's maybe unpack those kind of one at a time. And I think I'll start with what I've learned about business development and the Bizydev model. And it's been really cool to get entrenched. And I like kind of trying to go about explaining it a little bit creatively with each new person who asks. And I think, it's funny. We talk a lot about the different kind of expressions that represent what business development really means to us at Bizydev, and whether it's connecting the dots or about putting irons in the fire or any number of the other expressions, right? It's really, I think, it's the one we use most often is around we generate opportunities. And that's what always kind of strikes home for me. And I think I used it when I was just sort of speaking about how we got connected. But it's all business development is really about identifying and creating the most impactful opportunities for growth, somewhat regardless of where they sit. So in the business, we focus on customers, strategic partnerships, investors, and go-to-market advisory. But it's, the walk really matches the talk in that every client we work with in a really tailored and bespoke way to find out where are their biggest opportunities for growth and how do we execute on those opportunities. Who are the people they need to be in front of? What's the messaging they need to be bringing to the table? And it's bringing all of that together. So that's how I would, define business development. And I think it's oftentimes hard to define because it can mean something a little bit different, depending on where your opportunities for growth lie. And then to go into kind of the second part of the question on skill sets and what I've learned, I think you guys are master communicators, and it's been really awesome. It's been really awesome to watch. And I think this podcast is actually a good example of the way you and the rest of the team are really good at functioning across all forms of communication. And I think have actually really capitalized on this kind of post-COVID environment where that is demanded. And it's awesome to stand with you in a room, John, and have a face-to-face conversation. But you also know how to carry that communication over the phone, over video, when you're hosting a podcast, when you're communicating through email, and your communication style and effectiveness carries across those platforms. And I think that's something the whole team does pretty well, and has been great to watch and learn from. I can maybe keep going on skill sets, but I'll just pause there.
I think that's good. And part of today also is that the universe that you're in, as going back for your second year in the Tuck MBA program, and kind of your peer set, to me, listening to these conversations, hopefully we get a huge amount of views on this, Devlin, right? If we do some smart marketing around the conversation. I do think it's important for people to hear just mindset these days. When you take a part-time role or you're actually seeking a job opportunity, and we're working many times in a hybrid remote setting, what are some of the takeaways in terms of best practices that you followed or thought of or originated as it relates to working? Let's start with maybe in like a mostly remote setting in a new seat. How do you kind of approach things that you think would be helpful for others to learn from?
I think, let's see, there's, probably a couple things that we did well. I think, the question, it's interesting how you phrase the question, because I think the mostly remote framing is actually an important one. And there is a difference between 100% remote and mostly remote. And one thing that was really great is I did get to be in New York in person for a couple weeks at the beginning of the summer. And so the way we kicked off this internship was at least a balance of in person. And while I recognize not every specific opportunity comes with that, I think pushing to make it happen where it's feasible was something that was really valuable. I hope to make it back to New York again later in the summer. And while that didn't work out for personal reasons, I think it still was hugely valuable that we had that face-to-face time up front, got to know each other, and got to kick off in that way. So I would emphasize, I think remote work environments can be productive. I think taking advantage of the in-person opportunities, at least on occasion, is really helpful. I think remote work requires proactive scheduling. It's not maybe something that's revolutionary, but I think, the team, for example, started doing a more regular weekly scheduled hour-long catch-up that we calendared out, in perpetuity, in a way that is a little more structured than some teams use, because inevitably, if the team's going to see each other in person, it's easy to catch up on what's in the pipeline, what kind of new questions have come up from certain clients, and all that stuff. And there are fewer of those opportunities in a remote setting, and being proactive about kind of looking forward in your week and being like, what are the right touch points to have with each of the individuals I'm working with and the whole team. Being ahead of that is just hugely helpful, because calendars are a nightmare, and it's hard to schedule things last minute when they come up. And if you proactively seek that time that you need, it's hugely helpful.
No, I think that those are great points. And what was like a defining moment this summer, it probably happened a week or two ago, is where I asked you to prepare something, and not that I'm an over analyzer of what someone on the other side is generating. I actually reviewed a 1-page, call it a proposal, and I really didn't have any comments, which to me, A, is not easy to do, even if you've worked with someone for a year, 2 or 3. But I feel like really listening and learning along the way and incorporating what you hear, because feedback is meant to make things better. Hopefully people give feedback not to put others down or to heighten themselves up. But in my case, we're giving feedback to you so that, 1, you learn, 2, that the work product improves, and then to see it all come together was like a really nice thing. And then, one kind of running joke is when we had a Zoom call, right? I always enjoyed inviting you or having you participate, whether it was with a prospect, client, partner, investor, whatnot. How do you feel about entering? What's your strategy or advice when you are a relatively junior-ish person on a team and you're asked to participate in a Zoom call? What is the protocol that you think works best? And I'll make it multiple choice. Is it just be on the call, mute, no video? Is it to be on the call, video, unmuted, or something in between? What do you feel like is the most comfortable and worked best for you?
It's a great question, and I don't think there's one answer. I think actually the best protocol is, and now that I'm reflecting, I maybe could have done more of this working directly with you, but in a lot of these circumstances, I think it helps if you're going to have somebody, assuming there's somebody more senior than you or somebody else who's running the call, really helps to understand what they're looking for from you ahead of the call. And so I think right, like ahead of a meeting,
Yeah.
it just takes a lot of the pressure off to say, hey, thanks for having me on. Should I, treat this as more of an info, an opportunity to listen in, or is there a specific role that I should play here? And then I think, certainly there were a balance of meetings where some you had me along just to learn about what you were working on, and on others was, client work that I was helping drive. And I think the best protocol, video on, off mute, and get involved in the conversation early, because tying to the first part of like understanding your role within your team, the flip side of that is make sure you early on send the subliminal messaging of your role in the meeting to the other side, right? Because if somebody, especially if it's their first time meeting you, if you don't say something in the first half of the conversation, they'll just assume you're there to listen in, and that's fine. But if you wanted to pipe in, you may have felt like you missed your shot.
Yeah, I think it's also the responsibility of the inviter to acknowledge to the other side who's on the call and what their role is. Just even, and I think the simplest thing, taking the lead on not full on note taking, because there are transcription tools out there that could probably do it better than any human, but really capturing the kind of essence of the call and then some next steps that are needed is a good feeling when you're managing people, for them to be proactive and say, you discussed X, Y, and Z, and then have that associate step in and say, how do you want to follow up on this? And then ask the question and then be in a position to be able to execute. That's like, that's a mini hack that I think goes a long way in the role of senior leadership to kind of an associate level worker, employee, team member. So, and then what do you feel now that you're going back to school, right? Starting in the next few weeks, the kind of the mindset that you gained a little bit more of in business development. How are you thinking about approaching the next, call it 6 to 9 months at Dartmouth, to leverage some of the business development know-how that you experienced this summer in an actual MBA program in a second year?
That was an important part of this experience for me from the beginning. So I'm glad you asked, and I think the most important learning is just being not only not afraid, but proactive about building connections when you identify things that you're interested in or you see opportunity. And I think the way Bizydev does that at a professional level, as a business, has this incredible network and is building it every day. And I think, just sort of seeing the way you work, John, and the way you come across somebody you've met for the first time at a networking event, or, through a referral or a friend, and just immediately have, over time kind of trained your brain to see the different creative ways in which there's opportunities to work with that person, or an interest in something specific that they're doing, or trying to build. And I've started to do that more and more myself, and want to continue doing it, right? Because it's the way you do it at Bizydev. It doesn't feel like overly networky or always asking for something. It's a really genuine way of growing a network of people who are working on really amazing things that you're interested in, and creating a lot of opportunities that way. And I think that, that way of going about relationship building is hugely valuable. And
through the years, and I finished my master's degree at NYU, so slightly different than a pure MBA degree, but you always hear the importance of the network, right? You go to a school like your program, like at Tuck or you're at Harvard, is the network value that you gain, given like the costs of where, higher education is at today. You might as well, if it doesn't guarantee you a job, the network availability while you're there, through the program, after the program, is obviously, a huge benefit. And so I think leveraging it for everyone's benefit is obviously key. And I think nowadays with technology and tools and connectivity through things like Zoom and staying in touch, and using LinkedIn, there's a lot of ways to formulate the network so that it is there today and hopefully will be there going forward, because it's the worst thing is that if time goes by and you didn't really take advantage of it, to have regrets. I wish I had done more. And to be, I say it to my 8-year-old son, is to really be a leader. It's not just going to fall on your lap. The school could do, they have systems in place and history that they know what has historically worked, but the world is changing. Each class is different. Each person within the class is different. And I think that the sky's the limit in how you take a leadership role to bring students together, because you don't know where you're going to end up 5, 10, 20 years from now. And someone that you don't think is going to be maybe as relevant down the line could be the most important person in your life when you're, 40, 50, 60 years old. So I think if I could give you feedback, or to the people that are in your universe, it's really that all the things we do aren't linear, and you don't know where that relationship is going to kind of develop and lead to something, even where you could be helpful to them. Yeah. So
I think it's what you just said actually was something that was kind of bouncing around in my mind as I think, part of that network building, I think what you and what Bizydev does really well in building the network is seek out where you can help, can provide value, right? Not the other way around, right? Most businesses sort of seek customers or clients, or people that are going to make help pay the bills, make the bottom line work. I think what you guys really focus on is like what's really interesting, what seems like a cool opportunity, and where can I plug in to help. And I think John, you have countless conversations that aren't about soliciting a new client, or building up the Bizydev business. It's about, hey, I see something really interesting, and I think I can help. And it's those efforts that come around, like you just said, in the long run.
Yeah.
That approach to network building is a lot different than just sort of seeking out people when you need something.
Right. And as you said before, authenticity is something, I mean, you were on the inside, so you see where we come from.
Right.
And sometimes it's overlooked or underappreciated when you're in a quasi service business, sometimes how much goes into what seems like a simple point of execution, and the lead up to get there, and the kind of serendipity, as we say, that came together that was unplanned, unpredictable. So we'll spend a couple more minutes here, but I would say, are there any, when you look at your expectation going into a summer position versus a recap of what it was like, how are you thinking about, are you happy with the summer? And this is not a promotional piece for Bizydev. I think it's important to hear. Were you happy with the summer experience? And always like to hear maybe ways of, and not just for us, but other companies out there as well, ways that someone could improve in a year like 2022 and beyond, providing a great associate experience.
Yeah, I was really happy with the experience. I, set it up front a little bit, but I'll say again, I felt very, very lucky to land here. Pretty great experience being part of such a, of a relatively small but really impressive and hardworking team. And I think what what you and the team did that was, great for me above everything was being eager to get me on board and just treat me like a regular member of the team. And I think being in a relatively small environment where there's lots to do helps because it's somewhat demanded. But I think that made it feel like a more valuable, more meaningful experience from day one. And that was a really important piece of what I was looking for and a really important piece of what made the summer great. I think, for a future intern or for other companies thinking about how to make the most of a 10 to 12 week experience, I think probably the most helpful thing to do is to have a clear kind of vision on both sides, an agreed upon vision of what you hope and expect to accomplish over that time frame, and being honest and proactive about kind of updating the vision along the way. I think this is something we did a pretty good job at, but probably had the opportunity between both of us to do a little bit better of, our interview process. And I would recommend this to anybody thinking about hiring an intern or anyone, but our interview process was pretty involved and collaborative in kind of designing what we hoped I might accomplish or the different types of projects I would work on. And that gave us a great jumping off point. And like day one, we had a short meeting, and then I had a little bit of time, and there was stuff I was working on right away because I didn't have to ask what is there to do. I knew. And then I think, where we maybe could have done a slightly better job is have something scheduled 4 weeks in, say, where we said, all right, what did we kind of identify a month or two ago would be the biggest, most important projects? Are those still the biggest, most important projects? And if so, is that where we've made the most progress? Or has time gotten, pulled toward other little things and we're not getting done the things we really care about? Do we need to refocus? Or is there actually something else that's come up that's bigger, that's more important? We need to make sure it's getting priority. I think those kind of relatively frequent, honest check-ins, especially for a short experience like an internship, go a long way.
Right. And look, when we saw your background, good undergraduate degree, college athlete, cross-country skier, to me implied definitely good work ethic and an internal persistence that you just can't create for anyone that's out there. But to me, what was really interesting was your background at Bain and coming from the consulting world. And I think there's this really nice mix in kind of the world we're in of business development and growth, coupled with that analytical, consultative approach. And kind of meeting in the middle, because there were many times where, not to say that we're just winging it or thinking like on a whim about something, but you, I think, were able to bring the consulting background to a lot of the growth work we're doing, and vice versa. I think we were able to instill some growth ideas and efforts into the way that maybe you think about things. And so kind of one of the takeaways is I'm definitely keen to anyone in your universe, Devlin, that kind of has that Bain or McKinsey or some other consulting background, I think is a great experience and skill set and background to bring to Bizydev. So hopefully someone seeing this will see it as an opportunity to either reach out to Devlin or me and have some ideas on ways of partnering with us, working with us or whatnot. And I do think you finishing up this summer now moves you over into the John Fishman, the Bizydev, the alumni network that I'm very proud of all these years later, and I use numbers and I could be wrong, but somewhere I'd say between 50 and 100 interns have worked with me over the last 20 years. I always take pride in trying my best to give them a good experience. One, because when I was an intern, I may have worked in good environments, but I really didn't have that sounding board that took pride in teaching me and building my skill sets in a way that would move me down a certain path. And I think what I'm planning on doing in the fall probably October, is doing the first ever, call it John Fishman Summer Associate Intern Alumni Dinner, where people that I've worked with and care about and still maintain a relationship with, bringing them all together. So we are going to do that in October. So just keep your calendar not fully booked for the month, because you will
Right.
you'll be the most current person to give
Look,
it or something.
I'll look out for it. And I know, obviously I've already gotten to meet a couple of those folks. I know you mean it when you say it, because those were some of the first people I got to meet and build a relationship after meeting you. And they are obviously very happy to be in your network. And
I always used to say, and I still believe it, is hope I'm happy you had a great experience. I think you brought a lot to the table, added a ton of value. Highly recommend Devlin to anyone out there at any point in time that would consider him for their team or their company. But I always used to say that people leaving after summer, they'd say, what could I do for you? Or if you ever need anything, I'm there to also help you. And I always used to say that you don't owe me anything. I'm happy to have kind of, had you on the team this summer. But it's always, I used to say, maybe one day if my kids need help, that you'll be there for them to pay it forward, or my friends and my kids or something. So this will now be social proof that I'm asking or suggesting that one day, years from now, you kind of, do what's best to help them or others like them in the world.
Well, that's how I work too. So I can't wait. I can't wait.
All right. So we're going to wrap here. Devlin Shea, definitely great interview. I'm really hoping 37 minutes in that we break all School of Fish view counts. You've definitely developed some good minor and mid-level marketing skills this summer, despite what Jordan originally referenced you as, the good and the bad. And I am curious to see how you pump this to the top of the view count on the School of Fish Bizydev page. So,
well, part of it is, I have developed a little bit of design experience.
This is unrehearsed, by the way.
Customized a logo that I thought I would flash up for the last minute.
There we go. Busy Devlin going in both directions here. Very creative. We said having the name Devlin and our company does Bizydev, like there was no better name. That wasn't the reason why we hired you, but it was just a plus. So
people do
thank you. Yeah, exactly. He is available for graphic work in the fall if anyone needs it. Not through Upwork. Anyway, Devlin, thanks for today and for a great summer. And I'm going to wrap things up right now.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot, John.